Fairy Tail is the absolute worst, most popular series in the world. Everything I have ever seen from Fairy Tail has been a disappointment or an outright insult to my intelligence.
Hey, villain number one, and I will show you true hell.
Because once upon a time, Fairy Tail broke me, and my butt has been bothered ever since.
It doesn't even make any sense. Nothing makes sense. They're writing shit out of their ass.
From the corners of her closet, it's Loose Stuff with your esteemed host, Miss Loose.
Welcome to Loose Thoughts, everybody. I'm your host, Miss Loose. Thank you for coming back. Go on ahead and give yourself a round of applause right quick.
Wait, why is his name Loose?
I know you just saw those channels before this, and to make sure we keep a good parasocial relationship, we ought to establish some truth in here. I would say for me, Fairy Tail isn't horrible, but it also isn't that great either. There's some good things hidden behind it, but it's like shadowed out by a mountain of issues like magic systems, character arts, plot scaling, confusion over who the main character really is, etc. So to do something productive over this year of 2020 and honestly with this channel, I decided to do something we like to call in the fanfic community a fixing, but I'm gonna call it a rewrite because I want to be different. In this series, we'll basically be rewriting the entire show from the ground up. In this video right here, we'll be discussing the new lore and world building before going into a theoretical season 1 the next 3. So grab your food, drinks, whatever you want, and watch as we dive on in, okay? First off, we have magic, and I was honestly very hesitant to change the magic system, as I actually think it's probably the best consistent thing with the show, but I just did small tweaks to make sure that it's understandable. Magic still comes from things called ether nanos, atomic-sized particles that flow within the atmosphere. It's very unclear and unknown where they come from, but scientists have speculated that they've been around since the creation of Earthland pretty much. But what is known about them is that they find it in weird abundance within living things. Since they are able to be breathed in like other particles, ether nanos actually end up being absorbed by its host. With the magical effects of them, creatures actually evolved much faster rates compared to our world, creating a diverse amount of species around the land. All these things lived in some sort of natural existence until humanity learned how to manifest the powers of ether nanos into enhancement magic to increase their skills and prowess. In the beginning, humans learned how to use enhancement magics in either enhancing their own bodies or tools to help in situations. You know, like lifting things, chopping wood, breaking the necks of their enemies, whatever. But after expanding across the landmass, they came across other beings and gave them the name Kepus, animals and plants that evolved into frightening beasts of terrifying forms and strong magics. Humanity observed them from a distance and eventually learned how to copy their magics and used it to take over their lands and establish settlements all over Ishgar. Thanks to this, humans were further able to improve their way of living, having fire magic for lighting, cooking, or heating, water magic to make man-made lakes for drinking water in landlocked places, earth magics to make walls for houses or walls to defend against enemies, are even able to make their own kinds of magic by combining different types. This was proven effective, but often a waste of energy. Since using magic makes your ether nanos disappear the more you use it, and though they replenish over time, it takes too long to get back to full capacity. Even though all people are capable of using magic, only a few people know how to wield it properly, even fewer who knew advanced spells. Though it wasn't super efficient for a long time, it was helpful for many generations. Until one day, a mortician found very small crystal stones within one man's body. When he would apply pressure to these stones, they released a burst of magical energy. After examining it some more, he found out that the ether nanos within the man's body had actually compressed themselves into these so-called stones when he died. These stones would be later officially named lacrimas. Lacrimas found within humans are often very small, and because of their size, they're a whole lot more unstable, but the energy output was still better and easier to use than humans who knew magic. At first, people would legit rob graves in order to retrieve these stones, but then found out that Kepus would leave behind Lacrimus too, and at a much more stable rate since they came in larger sizes. So now the killing of Kepus transferred from being something of survival to being something of monetary gain, and many kingdoms and countries would have their armies or private groups go out and find Kepus and bring back their corpses for Lacrimus. Then about 100 years ago, a crisis came where fewer Kepus weren't being found or couldn't be defeated by the kingdoms and countries, which led to an energy crisis that spread amongst the continent of Ishgar. It wasn't until some miners in the Pergrande mountains actually started using a stone called coal as a fuel source, and it ended up working perfectly. With this, they came up with the invention of the steam engine. This was huge for the region, which led to their version of the Industrial Revolution and spread across the continent, leading to fast changes in industry and technology. From roads for horses and carriages to sweeping rails for steam trains connecting the nations together. Pots over fireplaces to now glorious gas stoves, and lanterns once lit by fire spells now shining thanks to electrical wires and telephone poles. Now humanity was using the resources of the land to power everything, which led to a dramatic decrease in the reliance on magic in everyday life. On the flip side, however, without the constant hunting, more Kepus started showing up amongst the countryside, which actually led to the official occupation of mage, those who wielded magic properly and professionally to serve and defend their countries. It actually became a very lucrative job. Now in the current day, mages keep magic alive within society, but can't keep up with the avid spread of new age technology. When using magic, you basically take the energy from ether nanos within you to perform the magic you want. And I'm gonna say this right here, just so we all have it point blank period going forward. There aren't really spells in this rewrite. I know, spells are like a huge thing within the show. Oh, you got Ice Mix spells, you got Dragon Slayer spells, you got Advanced Dragon Slayer. Like, I don't care about that. It took me a really long time to try to justify it, and I may go over this a whole lot more like an addendum or like a Q&A or something, but it didn't make any sense to put spells in here. So instead, when a person learns magic, just the more they practice, learn, and apply new techniques and master that type of magic, the more they can do with it. So for a good example, someone who's like a beginner in clairvoyance magic would only be able to see what's inside of the pocket of like one person, while someone who's like a master at that type of magic could see what's inside of like every pocket of everyone in like a room full of 100 people. So I just want to make that very clear right now. Basically, there are a lot of different ways people can learn magic. Some people become apprentices under older mages, some people just take a class, some people can even just buy a book. But there is a special case, however, where some people are born with a certain affinity to a type of magic, but it's under very rare conditions for it to actually happen. How much magic potential one has is dependent upon two things. One, the maximum amount of ether nanos one has within their body, and two, how much power does it take to use that type of magic in general. Inexperienced mages usually use more magic than they must, but through practice, they learn how to conserve magic better and use it more efficiently and more powerful. There are rankings of magic capacities, often using letters going from A the lowest to Z the highest. If you have an A rank, it probably means that you could do a small level feat and completely run out of ether nanos. And if you have a Z rank, it basically would make you a god in that world, but no one has ever reached this ranking. Yet, however. Kepus are often giving the same type of classifications as well. There are two classifications of magic though, holder magic and caster magic. Holder magic is magic that's channeled through items with Lacrimus to perform functions. They're more used as support for those who can't channel magic properly or just extra weapons for casters whose levels are getting too low. Caster magic is magic that is expelled from one's body or surroundings. Usually it's accompanied by a magic circle or glyph that dictates what magic is being used. To get to the gist of it, basically, if you know magic, you're technically a mage. To become officially recognized by your country, since magic used in public by an unregistered mage is considered illegal in most places, people must apply to become them through rigorous testing and exams to pass. When becoming an official mage, you're either hired by personal clienteles or your country to complete tasks with often huge payoffs. Some places have quicker qualifications, however. In Fiore, you can become a part of the military and officially filed as one, while in Stella, becoming a part of the state church automatically puts you on as one, but the gist are basically the same. Oh, sorry, I forgot one more thing. The One Magic. Originally, the One Magic was just what they called the whole enhancement magic junk that people do, but through time, it evolved into the term that just means the aura that ether nanos spread throughout the world that all living things feel. I just wanted a cooler representation of what the One Magic meant than just like love. I was like, ew. So yeah, that's what that means. Kepus are basically beasts that used to be animals and plants physically changed by the effects of ether nanos and capable of magic. Not all animals and plants can become Kepus, it's more like a chance occurrence for them. For things in the wild, it's about a 50-50 chance to become a Kepus, with their appearance and abilities being based upon where they're located. So you could get a regular squirrel with no magic prowess that's just like, a squirrel. Or you could get a Kepus squirrel that's like 10 feet tall and shoot ice spikes out of its tail. It just depends. Kepus, for the most part, aren't really attack prone. Most of them don't attack unless agitated or you invade their territories. But some actively do fight humans when they see them. Usually these are younger Kepuses, older ones just know generally to stay away. Usually Kepus can be found in less populous areas like countrysides or in the wild, since cities usually have the defenses and mages to deal with them. Before the discovery of lacrimas and to keep the amount of Kepus that were emerging low, humans put in massive work towards domestication. Through the process of domestication, it kept animals and plants from using their magic and turning into Kepus in general. Though this works on plants, it isn't 100% foolproof on animals, since some were still able to use magic, but thanks to human domestication, they were able to communicate with humans, and even gain humanoid/anthropomorphic bodies. Given the name domesticated Kepus, they don't make up a lot of the population, being about 1.5% of the Ishgar total population. They've been accepted by society, but some still see them as dangerous Kepus, and with the main religion Astrolism, it hurts them a lot more in certain countries. There are many different Kepus species around the world, but one that needs really further explaining right now is dragons. Dragons are considered the top tier Kepus of the world and are pretty much the natural masters of elemental magic. Emerging about 100 years before humanity, they started out as a mix of different genes from reptiles and insects. Because of their mixed gene pool, it was hard for them to naturally reproduce, but because of their genes, it gave them powerful aspects of each one of their ancestors. From thick scales to large wings, the ability to live in different environments and able to gain different types of magics, they were able to rise amongst the Kepus food chain to the very top. It wasn't until humanity came around that things got a little difficult for them. At first, humanity wasn't an issue with the dragon's superior magic and skill, but when humanity learned how to use enhancement magic, their uses of tools, and their massive numbers, it started becoming very effective on the dragons and dwindled their numbers. Then, with the development of civilizations taking out Kepus from lacrimas and development of more advanced magics, the dragons' numbers kept going down until near extinction. Now dragons are extremely rare to find in nature, and even finding one can bring about a good amount of celebrity depending on what you do with it. There are many kinds of dragons, since like with Kepus, they can be found in many forms. Winged dragons are basically just the Western depiction of dragons. They're four-legged, massive wings, long tails, you know the deal. And they come in varying lengths from 40 feet to almost 100 feet. Usually their scales are in the colors of warmer colors since they dwell within large land masses like forests, deserts, and mountains. They are considered the most powerful of the dragon types with their magic and flight, but it's hard for them to reproduce with other Kepus or really even each other. They're very territorial, meaning they have many squabbles with other dragons and Kepus for their land, and were the first dragons to be encountered by humanity. Funny enough, some archaeologists even found some sort of writing being established amongst them in caves. Nowadays, they are basically considered extinct. In comparison, lung dragons are the eastern depiction of dragons. They have long bodies up to 120 feet long, but because they don't have wings, they usually exist within large bodies of water, usually like large lakes or underwater caves or even in the ocean. Though people know that these dragons are rare to come across, it's not fully confirmed since the ocean is so vast they theoretically could be just fine, but no one really runs into them. Usually come in blues or purples. Wyverns are literally just regular dragons with wings instead of hands. They aren't super big, being only about 20 feet, but can actually fly longer than winged dragons. The one thing really interesting about them, however, is that they can live within any environment. So from tundras to volcanoes, they can basically just live anywhere. While winged dragons were the first one humanity encountered, wyverns were the ones that they learned a lot of their elemental magic from and fought majority of the time. Now wyverns only have a small preservation in Callum that attracts tourism, but other than that they are considered extinct in the wild. Come in shades of gray. Astrolism is the main religion within Ishgar, being prominent for about 400 years. It has leagues of churches in every kingdom and has become an integral part of the Stella Theocracy. It revolves around a god that created the universe named Cyrus, coming across the planet Earthland in a lifeless state. Feeling sorry for the world, he broke off a piece of his hair and one of his fingernails to create two beings. His golden hair was named Sigma, and his white fingernail was named Titan. He directed them to shine upon the planet and to use their light to bring it to a righteous state. The two did so, with Sigma forming the sun and Titan forming the moon. With their light containing ether nanos, they were able to bring the planet to a habitable state of what we know today. However, over time, Titan became irritated. He would complain about how Sigma would take up most of the sky and no one was able to see him in the stars. Sigma said that the night sky wasn't as grandiose as today, and this ended up leading to a conflict between the two. Without them maintaining ether nanos, it led to some of them becoming corrupted and transformed some of the creatures from their hatred into the Kepus. Eventually, the two came to a compromise, with them both trading control of the sky, creating the day and night cycle. Sigma and Titan both have different connotations and are called upon based on the need. Sigma, representing the sun, represents life, energy, strength, and fire. He is called upon in moments of weakness and despair for healing. He's the more popular of the two. Titan, being the moon, represents change, water, rest, and magic. He's called upon to help in life-changing moments and to help guide those dealing with death and the emotions that come with it. He's actually very popular with mages, since most mages would practice their craft in the night, and is thought to help with very difficult feats being performed. Ishgar is the megacontinent and the main setting for where our story takes place. After humanity established themselves, they spanned out amongst the landmass to colonize their own settlements. Countries and kingdoms have risen and fallen across the years, but these 6 remain and have survived the change of time, and now exist amongst one another. Pergrande is the oldest kingdom on the continent of Ishgar. Being the place where humanity originated, it started off from a small number of villages that were swallowed up by the force of one family later to be known as the Marshals. To prevent the social climbing of other groups to topple them, it emphasized the separation of class to keep them at the top. Now, thousands of years later, that system has changed into a more economic focus with its separation of worker and sellers. Priding itself for starting the first industrial revolution with its massive amount of coal deposits in the mountains, they are the most industrialized kingdom, being able to produce more weapons, technology, and man-made products than any other. Pergrande itself is a traditionalist monarch, focusing on pure bloodlines. The country is actually dealing with the current issue where its presiding king, Lawrence Marshall, is being questioned by a member of the council of his legitimacy to the previous king. They basically controlled the Hephaestus Mountains and enforced large tariffs when exporting to other countries, except for Callum, who gives them monetary tributes for helping them from economic bailout. The plural is Grandian. Callum is an oligarchy ruled by a small council called the Tertiary, who handle all situations of the country. Members of the council are brought in through recommendations, and membership lasts till either death, retirement, or being voted out. To maintain order, they usually have members from different social statuses to have different opinions of the people. About 50 years ago, a massive locust swarm came in from the jungles, affecting the country's crops, which were already low from a massive drought that was happening over the past few years. Even though they were easy to beat, they came in massive numbers, even making it difficult for their mages to deal with. So they called upon the help of Pergrande, who offered food export and more mages that were able to help the country stay afloat till the drought was over. Now forever in their debt, the country gives a monetary tribute to the kingdom every year. It also has very loose restrictions and qualifications on mages, so they generally have the highest mage population on the continent. Otherwise, it has a huge culture for the arts, having many massive statues, festivals, and murals for all to see, especially since it holds the Ishgar Festival, a massive art festival with collaborations from all the countries held within the capital of Balaam. The plural is Cali. Mistral is run by an emperor who has a police force called the Hokkaido, who are ancient order of samurai mages who train harshly under tradition and who have new leaders elected based upon combat. Since when settling thick forests that hid Kepus, people had to learn how to defeat and defend them, with the best of them forming the Hokkaido and establishing the capital of Kanto. However, with industry slowly creeping into the country, the Hokkaido have started losing their power and rankings thanks to outward technology and countries. The plural is Mistralian. At first, the Republic of Isenburg actually started off as a monarchy, then years later their king died, and with him having no heirs and being the last of his line, the country decided to move on from that and started a democratic republic. So now the people have a congress with a senate with different representatives from provinces coming together to basically just vote on laws and issues. Only one of them is really worth mentioning right now. His name is Roland Hado. He's a domesticated wolf Kepus who represents a province in the east. A good bit of the land is taiga and tundra, which means that not a lot of food can grow in the country, but it led to a bigger focus on herding, leading them to have huge exports on things like cattle and fur coats. Because of the colder weather, the soldiers are much more well trained, leading them to actually have a good relationship with the neighboring country Mistral. The plural here is Isen. The Stella Theocracy is the only kingdom where church and state are intertwined. So the church, which upholds Astrolism, has the state priests appoint the next leader, which is called a Stellar, to rule over the country. Though people of the country think that the Stellar is chosen based upon upholding the religion the best, in reality, it's a whole bunch of backdoor shady shit. So families high within the church's rankings basically push a candidate to the priest, and they usually have money, items, or even fucking murdering each other in order to get that position. So, you know, life. So if you remember from the Astrolism section, I talked about how people believe the Kepus were created from the gods' conflict, and because of that reason they see the Kepus as like a unintentional stain, in better words. So because of that reason, it just trickles down to domesticated Kepus in general, which leads them to being barred from joining most churches or even using them in religious practices or ether nanos experiments. Otherwise, they have a big respect for the dead, having family burial grounds. But just like how the Hokkaido are losing their strength within Mistral thanks to industry, and the Stella Theocracy, industry has changed the way that people view religion and is pushing more of the idea of the true separation of church and state. It has fine relationships with other kingdoms except for Pergrande, who they have constant conflicts over for resource in the Hephaestus Mountains. The plural is Stellian. Woo, child. Alright. You finally made it to freaking Fiore. It originally started out as a part of the Stella Theocracy until a Stellar that promised to lessen taxes on the region backed out of their agreement, and then led to the leaders and pastors of the region rebelling against the church. Secretly backed by the Republic of Isenburg, they were able to gain independence and form the Kingdom of Fiore, named after a famous general who led the rebellion and became the first king. After 200 years of independence, it's a pretty well-off country. One thing that helps is the high precipitation, which leads to lush forests and the right temperatures to produce exotic foods like cocoa. Since things like chocolates are considered luxury goods in some countries, especially Isenburg and Mistral, it helped establish it as a neutral kingdom even to Stella. They are also masters of the sea, with them being the first to reach the other side of Ishgar by boat, leading it to have a strong fishing industry and powerful fleets along their coastline. After the rebellion, is much more lenient towards domesticated Kepus, with them helping out against Stella, but still has records of microaggressions and systematic issues against them. Its queen, Fiore, was appointed to her position about 2 years ago, and is trying to increase the number of mages within the military, allowing immediate mage status when joining the ranks. The plural is Fiorean. And that brings us to the end of part 1. Thank you so much for watching. I know that seemed like a lot to do for the anime, but trust me, it was needed. Like, there were some things in there that were like kind of defined, but I was like, I just need to go back over and make sure we kind of have like a timeline and a history for this, because some things are just left so open-ended or not explained at all that it felt confusing. Like, doing this rewrite, I just discovered that there were like other countries than just Fiore and Alvarez, and it blew my mind because I'm like, we had this whole freaking map and nobody ever went here. What? Okay, but in all seriousness, no, thank you so much for watching. I included a transcript in the description if you want to read it, because I know my voice is bad sometimes. I have the unfortunate mixture of monotone, southern accent, and quote-unquote gay child mixed in there. So if you want to know more but couldn't understand what I was saying, there's a transcript in the bottom for you. Yeah, so just like, share, subscribe if you would, please. That would be thankful a lot. My PayPal, my Cash App's in there if you want to send me something for this, because you know a girl needs it. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day and stick around for more parts. Bye.